everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I got a load. I actually took the weekend off. My wife and my daughter and I were out on Cape May, New Jersey. We like to go to the beach at Easter time some years. And when I say I was on Cape May, I mean the geographical Cape May, not the town of Cape May. I was actually in Wildwood Crest, so up the coast just slightly from Cape May. But we had a good time. Didn't do a lot of anything. It's still a slow season, but we did go out on the beach and walk around. The wind was pretty stiff. Got to ride our new tandem that we bought recently. It's new to us, but made some adjustments to it, getting it ready for summer and some rides we're planning on doing. So it was fun. And yeah, I just had, like I told you in the last video, I just had a load going to New Jersey. Got unloaded, dropped the trailer at one of the big shippers we have there in South Jersey, and then I just bobtailed to a Walmart that was not, just across the bridge from Wildwood. And so I just met my wife there, so it worked out good. And then I just took off from there yesterday, picked up a trailer at the same place I dropped one, and got a load coming over here to Ohio. So I'm in the Columbus area right now. So have you guys seen the price? I fuel today. The price of DEF is out of control. Like, it's gone up like $1 a gallon in the past, I don't know, because I don't know when the last time I bought DEF is. I don't keep close track of that. But DEF is out of control. And I saw this video a while back where a guy that has a company, like a trucking company, I think he's in Canada, but he made a video talking about the benefits of having a newer, more aerodynamic truck on, like an owner-operator's bottom line. And I remember some of the comments. It was cracking me up because these guys were like, yeah, but what about the cost of that DEF? I don't want that stuff. And I was just like, there is a cost to DEF, definitely, but it's kind of negligible when you get right down to it. I mean, I think I was running pretty low, so I think I pumped maybe like 17 gallons. But like I said, I can't remember the last time I bought DEF. I mean, I just don't pay attention to how quickly it gets used. I will tell you this, though, that I've noticed that when I'm driving slower, that the rate of DEF usage, which kind of makes sense, but it seems like that the rate of DEF usage is lower the slower I go, but that it's even maybe more beneficial than it is just on the fuel. But anyway, DEF is out of control. I mean, we need to release some DEF from the strategic DEF storage that the government has. I need these DEF companies to, I mean, come on, it's like piss and water. It's pig urine and water, I think. Like, how expensive can that be? We don't have enough hogs pissing on things to just keep the price of DEF the same. I mean, we got to do something about this because it's getting out of control, and it's just really hard to keep up, and it's hard to make a living with DEF at like $4 a gallon. So I'm calling on Congress to do something about it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I may have to strike. I may have to drive around the Beltway or something to get DEF prices lowered. And imagine what it's like for people that are driving Sprinters. I mean, it must be crazy. So anyway, that's my rant about death. So somebody asked me, sorry about the bright light on my shiny head. Somebody asked me about, and I think they're a prime driver, about how do I pick loads, and so I wanted to talk about that because, you know, a lot of times, look, there's a lot of people out here in the field, on the road, whatever you want to say, that think that how much you get paid per mile is the be-all, end-all when it comes to taking a load. But, you know, candidly, if those people that always talk about it that way actually believe that, then they would be taking loads that deliver in like Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx and on Staten Island all the time. They'd be taking loads that run right into Boston or Philadelphia or some other place that lots of people don't want to go. You know, so that, you know, cents per mile or the mileage rate or whatever, that's just one calculus. But let me just share with you some of the things that I take into consideration. So in my world, there's two and a half kinds of driving that I do. One is what I've been doing the past little bit, which is driving solo. The other is driving with like a TNT student. So basically team driving, although, you know, I do spend a lot of time in the seat, you know, kind of watching things, especially when I have somebody on my truck that I am not super familiar with. And then the half of it is what I did for PSD, which is, you know, I do most of the driving. I let the PSD student do a little bit of the driving, and, you know, we keep kind of shifting that ratio. And I haven't had much experience doing that. That's why I said it was a half. So if I am solo, so let's talk first about like timing of loads. Like, when do they need to be picked up? When do they need to be delivered? So if I'm solo, I often like loads that will allow me to drive slower, because hurrying often, you know, it's just going to use more fuel and it's not necessarily going to pay me more. If I have a teammate, like when I had Paul on the truck or Gabe or Connie, then I want to run and I want to just pile up the miles, because team loads are typically a faster pace. Like some solo loads, you just got to run 65. A lot of team loads, though, you mostly have to run 65. Like you know, you don't have a lot of time because they're designed for a truck that almost constantly moving. So though, that's one consideration. How much time do I have? Now, if the load pays more, because, like, for instance, I did a high val load recently that was a level 1 high val, which, to be honest with you, I didn't know that solo drivers could even do high val, but apparently there's 5 different categories. In the first 2, you can have a solo driver do that load. So this was a high val load that had a very high CPM, but it really wasn't on that tight of a schedule. In fact, I did my 10 hours, you know, in between, and still had plenty, you know, like, I think I was parked for like 14 hours because I didn't want to start out the next day because I knew when my delivery schedule was. So, like, I drove that load slow, but had it been a much tighter window, like let's say it delivered, you know, 4 hours earlier than what it was set for, then I probably would have just run, you know, as fast as I could, 65 or whatever to get it there. But again, if it doesn't pay as much and there's a shorter schedule, that might be a reason that I would reject that load. But just because it doesn't pay as much but it has a long lead time, if I'm not in any particular hurry to do anything, I just run the load at a lower speed, right? I make up for the fact that it doesn't pay quite as much. And I think a lot of people miss that. They're like, oh, this load pays $2.25 a mile and this load pays $1.90 a mile. Well, that's great, but if you use up all that difference in fuel, that, what did I say, $2.25 and $1.90, that 35 cents a mile in fuel, then, you know, maybe you really don't get a benefit. And let me say this up front too. Never do I reject or accept a load based solely on the pay, whether it's the line haul, fuel surcharge, whatever other things are there, holiday pay, tolls, etc. That's not how I think, because I kind of think more in terms of days than I do, and I did a video about that, but I think especially when I have somebody on my truck, I think more in terms of days. Okay, so that's one consideration, right? How long do I have to get it there? Can I drive slower, or do I need to really hammer it? The next consideration is it a place I want to go? And when I say that I want to go, I kind of categorize that in two different ways. One, is it a physical location geographically that I want to go to, like Los Angeles or Chicago or Springfield, Missouri, or London, Kentucky, or, you know, Bradenton, Florida? Is it a place that I want to go? Because some places I like more than others. Like, for instance, I love running to Southern Cal, you know, Los Angeles County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. I love running there. I like running the Central Valley of California. I like running any place in California. If it's wintertime, that, you know, then weather is also a part of that consideration of where I want to go geographically. If it's a load going into Salt Lake City from Chicago and it's January, you know, before I accept that, I am gonna look at the forecast all the way across I-80 into Salt Lake City. You know, are trucks getting ready to get blown off the road in Wyoming in the next 2 days? Because if they are, then I'm probably gonna reject that load. It's not that I'm afraid of driving in snow. You know, I'll go anywhere. You know, I don't, like, some guys won't drive certain places, certain parts of the year. I don't do it that way. I don't have some blanket rejection. What I decide is based on that trip. And then, you know, I know, okay, if I get to Salt Lake City and I got a load going back across Wyoming, again, I take a look at the weather. Maybe I take a different route if I still want to get back east or whatever. But I always consider those things. And same thing if it's like, you know, flooding down in, you know, Louisiana, or there's going to be a hurricane, or I'm running into Houston and I know there's going to be a rainstorm that sits over Harris County for the next 48 hours and there's all these underpasses are going to be flooded. I'm not going to run down there. I don't want to deal with it, right? I don't want to have to go 150 miles out of my way or sit in traffic for hours. Like the snowstorm in Virginia this past winter, you know, people were just stranded out there. I don't, you know, I was on the road then. I just don't, you know, I want to work around those things. So that is also part of it. The other part of where do I want to go is shipper and receiver. Is it a drop and hook? Because sometimes there are places that are infamous, and you ask around Prime, I'm not going to throw any of our customers under the bus, but there are some places that are infamous for never having stuff ready when it's supposed to be, like not even close. And you say, oh, I got a drop and hook, I'm going to run over here, hook this, it's going to take me, maybe you do your 30 while you're switching trailers out or whatever, and then you get there and they're like, oh, it's not ready yet. And then 2 hours later, yeah, it's still not ready. I mean, it happens all the time. In fact, on this load that I'm on now, I went there and it was in the window. It wasn't at the very end, but it certainly wasn't the very beginning. And they're like, yeah, we don't know when it's going to be ready. I'm like, okay. They're like, well, we'll call you. They never called me. I went in, I went to sleep actually. I woke up several hours later because I had set an alarm. And, I went in, they're like, oh man, that's been ready for a while. Crap like that, right? Same thing with receivers. The usual suspects where, not only are they going to have lumpers, but it's going to take, 2.5, 3 hours just to get in a door. Then, it's going to take another 4 or 5 hours. Now, again, people like my friend Lyle, he's happy to do detention pay. I'll take it when I can get it. But truthfully, I didn't take up driving trucks to sit still. I still, I know it's part of the business, but it is a consideration. And then some places I don't want to go just because I frickin' hate them. Okay? There's one meat packer, one company that if I know it's them, and actually they try to like disguise a lot of their facilities with different names. But if I can figure out who it is, if it's one particular meat packer, I won't go there. I just refuse to go to their facilities. The other place that I really don't like going is Florida. And it has nothing to do with the prices coming out of Florida. Because there are other places like that where the prices aren't so great. It has to do with, I just don't like driving in Florida. I don't, the highway, and I've said this before, the highway system is really, for a state as populated as it is, in a state that has really basically no, public transportation to speak of, in terms of moving people around, like say like the Northeast or whatever. It's a pain in the ass to drive in Florida. I spend a lot of time sitting in traffic, a lot more than most places. And yeah, so it's just not a place I like to go. Part of it is because there's one way in and one way out. I mean, you really, once you go south of Jacksonville very far, there's only one way to get out of there, and it's head back north. So that's my issue with Florida. And another consideration is, sometimes it's just the type of load. I'm not a huge fan of beer loads, for example. And weight sometimes plays into it, but not always. Some loads that are heavy, they ride pretty well. Other loads that are heavy don't ride well. A lot of it I do by feel. But my biggest thing is I like to keep moving. And so, like, when I have a trainee on my truck, a TNT trainee, I pay them not by the mile, I pay them essentially by the day, right? Because it's $900 a week, so divide 900 by 7, right? So whatever that is, I think it's like $131 a day or something. That's what I'm paying them every 24 hours. So I don't want to sit around. And I've had a couple of times where I had to go to my fleet manager and I'm like, dude, I got 2 people on this truck. It is not going to work for me to sit for 10 hours. If you don't have loads going out of a place, like if you send me to Atlanta, but sales doesn't have anything else for 10 hours, I got a problem with that. Don't send me there. And I'm always going to be talking about that, right? Like once I get even solo, right? Like I have a load picking up tomorrow morning, so I'll have more than enough time to do my break and then get a washout if I need to. I'll have enough time to do everything I need to then pick the load up on time and get it delivered on time. But if I have a lot of extra time, like that will not make me happy. A couple of times when Paul was on my truck, either he or I got like rolling 34s because we weren't busy enough. Like I drove and then we stopped and we both slept, and then we got up and drove some more, but I drove again. So like he got a 34, and then a couple of times it happened like that. So here's like kind of my bottom line, or my overarching idea for me. I don't look at the price. I mean, I do. I shouldn't say I don't look at it. I certainly always make a mental note of it. I look at it. And here's another kind of a sidebar. Every once in a while, you will get a load and it will say it's 400 miles and it's paying $1,200, right? It's paying $3 a mile. And you get that in the initial messages. And you might accept that load, and then when the main dispatch with all the information comes through, now it says 400 total miles. And by the way, paid miles are miles, okay? So I always aggregate whatever the total miles are. That's what it's got, that's the number you need to look at. Forget about loaded miles, right? Because this always cracks me up when I see people that like advertisements, we pay loaded and empty. I'm like, oh, that's great, because I thought if you didn't pay empty, then I didn't have to comply with the law, right? I mean, that's stupid, right? You're driving a truck, It doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's like a pilot, like some guy at American Airlines. Hey, Jim, we only paid you like $37 for that flight from Miami up to Jacksonville because there was only 3 people in the back. Now, if it had been fully loaded, we would have paid you like, $1,240. Like, that's not a thing, right? Flying a plane is flying a plane. Driving one of these things is driving one of these things. Yeah, there are some considerations if it's got 45,000 pounds in the back, but there's still a lot of things we got to worry about even if it's empty, okay? Or even if you're bobtail. So anyway, a little digression there. But I look at the total miles. That's what matters to me, total miles, and I make a note of the price. But once I agree to something, I don't give a crap if sales is like, oh, geez, we offered way more than we should have. Instead of 1,200 on this load, it should have only been 1,000. Yeah, well, guess what? Like Henry Hill said in Goodfellas, fuck you, pay me, okay? I take screenshots. If they try to change the number and it doesn't go in my favor, then I still demand the higher number. And I've had this happen once or twice, and I told my fleet manager, I said, they offered something, and this is kind of the lawyer in me, this is first year contract law, right? Offer and acceptance, okay? They made an offer, I accepted it. They don't get to then go back and change the terms, because if those guys in sales think that's okay, then I'll sell them a car. Oh, hey, how much for the Z28? It's 42 grand. Oh man, I'll take it. And then, you go to closing, it's like, it's 48. Well, wait a minute, you said 42. Yeah, but we changed our mind. If that's okay with the guys in sales, that's their problem. But don't ever let somebody change it on you in a way that disadvantages you. If they say something, and you accept. Now, if you hem and haw and then they change it before you accept it, send in the message. But I keep a record, right? If I don't see what if what I see I accept and then it's changed later, I got screenshots of all that and I demand to get that money. And it is worth, going to the mat for, because, it's not my problem if sales screwed up. They can take it out of somebody else's pay, not mine. So I look at, like, where do I want to be? Is it a place I want to go, shipper or receiver? A place I want to go geographically? What's the weather going to be like? Because all of those things make your job harder. If you go to a place where every single time you go it's a drop and hook on both ends, and every single time it's really easy, is that worth 25 cents a mile? Might be, especially if you don't have to hurry. It might be a place you want to go and hang out. Like, some people might want to go down to South Florida and then pick up a load 3 days later out of Bradenton. If that's what you want to do, then use that to your advantage. You could take a load out to Flagstaff, go park in Williams, Arizona, say, hey, I'm taking a 34, take the train to the Grand Canyon, which would be really cool. I've never taken the train, but I've been to the Grand Canyon. That'd be really cool to do, right? And you could stay, right there at the Lowe's in a nice little town. You could get a hotel, whatever you want to do. I know people do that. That's how you pick that load, right? It goes to a place you want to go. And, the other thing is, I never pick a load based on whether or not I can get it on this week's paycheck. Like this load I got, today's Tuesday. I'm picking up today's Tuesday. Sorry. I'm picking up Wednesday morning. Now, I could get the load, pretty close to being delivered. But I don't care, right? It can be on next week's paycheck. I think a lot of people are really short-sighted. They're like, oh, I'll take this load that's only 200 miles so I can get one more load in this week. Don't do that. Unless this is your last week at Prime, why do that? Like, businesses don't do that. They don't go, well, actually, sometimes they do if they're publicly held. They try to, get numbers for the quarter. But we're not doing that, right? It's like, I'm playing the long game here. I'm playing the long game. You should be too. So don't do stuff like that that's short-sighted just so you get a few more bucks this week in your paycheck. Because, you might be trading, that might be a $500 swing just because you're worried about getting something into payroll by Wednesday at noon instead of, delivering on Thursday morning on a trip that pays significantly more. So if you're doing that, try to get out of that habit. If it's the only load that makes sense, then take it. Now, one more thing. I don't have load choice, except I do have load choice. People say, oh, I want to get a load board and 3 different loads. You know what? If I wanted to be on a load board, I wouldn't be at Prime. Okay? And here's the thing. A load board is meaningless if I get a load that I'm happy with, right? If they offer me one load and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy with that, then why do I need a load board? And, somebody will say, well, you'd have more choices. But I don't need choices. It's like, if something I enjoy eating is lasagna and I went home tonight and my wife had lasagna on the table, I wouldn't be like, man, I would have really liked to have looked at a menu and picked my own meal. Well, first of all, my wife would hit me with a frying pan or something. But even beyond that, right? I'm like, who cares, right? Eat the lasagna, and then tomorrow night you can have Swiss steak or whatever it is that you wanted, or meatloaf, right? But you know, too many choices. And, you know, the other question I always have is, well, what if you get 3 choices, you hate them all? You know, the way it works now, if I get 1 choice and I don't want to do it for whatever reason, excuse me, then I can just say no. And no one gives me crap. Well, actually, sometimes night dispatch does. But I'm just like, nah, I don't want it. Find me something else. And typically I'll give them some criteria if they're really off the mark. And one last thing, I promise, one last thing. Don't do somebody favors if it doesn't benefit you immediately or in the long run. In other words, I don't do any favors for night dispatch. I did when I first got here, but it kind of backfired. I'll do favors for my fleet manager because I got the same fleet manager day in and day out. But night dispatch, weekend dispatch, I don't really care. I don't owe them anything. And they don't care if they can get me to take a crap load or a load they consider crappy, they'll do it. Now, if it's something I just happen to want, then I'll take it. But don't do them any favors because it's not going, you know, if you're a lease operator, it's not gonna make your life any easier. You know, you're just getting something off their plate that's just, you know, it's just bones and gristle. They didn't want it on their plate anyway. So, you know, if it's not a steak, don't take it. So anyway, I hope that was a little bit helpful. Again, this is just what I do. Some people are all about the dollars and cents. I am too, but I take a little bit different view of things and what dollars and cents really mean. Because I also like to be happy. I've had jobs where I made a butt ton of money and I was miserable the whole time. You know, and I feel like I got paid for some of my misery. But even when I would get more and more money, I'd ask for raises and I'd get them. I'd get huge bonuses. I still wasn't happy. I mean, I was happy for a minute when I got a bonus, $50,000 bonus at Christmas. But then, you know, I came back to work January 2nd. I was like, I hate this place. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.